Well, not too long ago, I brought you some information about a proposed gravel pit that's going in next to the Big Hill Springs Provincial Park. And of course, that leaves one to scratch their heads as to the common sense approach to something like that. Nonetheless, my next guest has some additional information that maybe even might be more disturbing. Real pleasure to welcome Keith Koebish. He is a wildlife biologist, a former parks manager, and someone that brings a great deal of credibility to the argument that there are species at risk that could be placed in jeopardy should this mine go ahead. Keith, good morning, and thank you very much for taking some time.
Thank you, Michael.
So let's start with that. Give us a sense of the various species at risk that call that area home and what the threat to them could be if this mine is approved.
Well, it's really quite dramatic. You know, we've got some of these apex predators out here. There's a sow grizzly that was collared, and she's had 2 successful litters in the area. And she, of course, is designated as threatened. We have peregrine falcon that nest in the cliffs and buffalo jumps surrounding that park. We've got everything from fish, birds, amphibians, pretty much everything in that area that are species at risk. The fish would be the bull trout, and they spawn there. There's really very few streams coming out of the Bow River that would be home to bull trout. And it's been designated that by Ocean and Fisheries, or Fisheries of, yeah.
So I guess it really does leave one scratching their head that if all of these species at risk are known to be in the area, how are we even discussing the potential of a mine that could threaten the lives of these species?
Well, I have no idea how that came about. I stumbled upon some of it when I was reading a paper that when they were doing the classification system in provincial parks that was drafted in the late 90s. And they, of course, did an inventory of what they had. And then I thought, well, gee, these are species at risk. And if they're, particularly the birds, there's a number of them, and there's good data because we've got a lot of bird watchers, and they take careful note on what they're seeing and where.
Does it kind of leave you scratching your head a little bit, Keith, that, we have these species at risk legislation, we have certain environmental standards, and yet, a municipality even considering a proposed gravel pit, just do they not know it? Did they choose to ignore it? Do they feel that, well, if we're not inside the park, we don't have an impact on these critters?
Well, I think that they know full well they choose to look the other way. Politically, we're doing the wrong thing again. That war room that Jason's got seems to be declaring war on the wildlife and the residents around it. They're not helping Alberta's reputation by going and doing things like this. This is not an obscure park that is in the middle of nowhere that nobody's going to even notice what's happened. This is right next to Calgary. It's got unique species. The park is visited by at least 250,000 people per year. And for a 70-acre park, that's very significant. Even monetarily, you can't consider this a great idea. 250,000 visitations plus would equate to a lot of money generated to our economy, and would probably exceed what's made on this 40-cent cap levy on gravel.
Let me come back to the species at risk. I know that as a former professional biologist and someone that
Mhm.
worked in the outdoors for all the years that you did, um, that as a trained professional, you have standards in which you have to go out and do your job. And I kind of just scratch my head. Are the folks that are being hired by the gravel pits, the coal mines? I mean, I like to think that they are also professionals and would present this type of information to the people that have to make a decision. Do you feel something is being lost or just simply ignored?
It's being purposely ignored, I would believe. They did an inventory of biota, and they came up with gophers and a few other songbirds that are not species at risk. They didn't mention any of the ones. Yet, had they asked any local person here, they would have found out. So, you know, we had another gravel pit very close by, and in their hydrology report, they didn't even know which drainage they were in. They thought that we were in the Red Deer River system and we're on the Bow. That's how accurate they are. And as far as the endangered species legislation, it leaves a lot to be desired. Every time it comes up to be voted on, whether it's federal legislation or whatever, an election gets called and it gets swept away to be only heard again, but it never happens. We've been trying to pass serious endangered species legislation in Canada since 1990, and it hasn't really happened. We have provincial legislation that covers this. But again, you have to be serious about enforcing the rules. I think that the attitude by government is, having been a government employee and being retired, I can be the whistleblower and say, you don't keep your job long if you want to rock the boat. They
Let's
don't rock the boat.
let's talk a little bit more about what else is at risk in that area. And I think you made a point when we were talking a little bit over email that there's a significant spring that is also in the area that could be threatened if the mine moves forward.
Well, the spring is ranked number 4 nationally for its significance as the type of spring it is, which is a cold water mineral spring. It's rated number 3 in the province for its clarity. Total dissolved solids are only around 300, so it's very pure water, and it's cold, and that's why it's so significant to the fish. There's about 100 feet of overburden on top of that aquifer. Now, if you remove it to get at the gravel, then you're going to be so much closer to the aquifer, and hence the water temperature warms up. And everybody knows that trout fishes or whatever, it's cool water because it retains more oxygen.
You mentioned that bull trout, again, species at risk. Does that not kick in the federal government? Would the federal environment minister have to be involved in final approvals for something like this?
Should be. Whether that happens, who knows? I mean, theoretically, the Fisheries Act is very powerful. If you put any deleterious material to fish into that water, you can be charged, and the fine can be exceptionally high. Like, let's say if they did that up in Fort McMurray, there'd be some serious problems. There could be $1 million fines issued. But here in Rocky View, they seem to be ignoring it. And I hope that they listen to us, because ultimately we're the taxpayer. We're the ones paying the fine, not our counselors.
So on that point, Keith, how do you and others have your voices heard in this matter?
Well, it's very difficult in that letter writing has to be completed by today. But barring that, I think that this has to go past the municipal government. I think that if your listeners wanted to help, they should maybe contact Jason Nixon and ask him what's going on. This isn't the first time. There was the Raven River controversy. There was the coal mining down south. It seems like the government really should be in damage control, because this shouldn't be happening to us.
Well, let us. I guess, but just before we do go, when is the Rocky View Council expected to make a decision?
They will hear this on March 2nd. And actually, your listeners, if they were inclined, could send in a 5-minute video presentation. You could probably do that on your cell phone and have that addressed to Rocky View. I don't have the file number handy, but this would be the Mountain Ash Summit pit application.
All right, Keith, it's an issue that obviously we are going to continue to stay on top of, and we'll see what the municipality does rule, and come back to you for the appropriate response. In the meantime, keep up the good fight, and we will be talking to you again real soon. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mike.